Things don't have names. We made them up. Many cultures have a creation story.
As you'll see, or maybe you already know, improvisation itself in my work plays a very important part. I came out of school having done something quite experimental, and the Canadian film environment was encouraging me to make something commercial and 35 millimeter. So that was my entrance into that world. And I've always been interested, well, not always, but at some point I became interested in, involving an audience, bringing films to people to experience new things that they hadn't seen before, or perhaps challenge them to look into other dimensions. So that's kind of how I got into the hybrid position of, what they call experimental and documentary and essay. I was invited to a dinner with this strange man named Andreas Zust, who was a meteorologist, artist, collector. We'd never met before, and after 2 hours, he said, "Do you want to make a film about the Northern Lights?" And I said, that's a good subject, why not? But I didn't really believe, that he was going to carry this through. But he did. 2 months later, I got a phone call in Canada, and he says, "Peter, I have the money. Let's go film the Northern Lights in the Arctic." And I was okay. And he got the money from an artist who sold his paintings for a lot of money. He was a friend of his, and it was all not normal, So those are some examples of going with the flow, what you could also call improvising, looking for little hooks that will open up and allow you to do something. Not everything is as rigid as it sometimes seems in terms of getting a film made. But the other thing about diary and travel that I think many artists, writers, filmmakers would agree is it puts you into a different state when you go into a foreign place and you have your wits about you and you're not in your usual patterns of thinking, and it makes you actually very responsive. So in a way, it's a great tool to make you see and to make you react and to start, putting things together to make associations. And my biggest work like that was Gambling Gods and LSD, which I shot. Well, the whole film took 10 years, and it was shot in 4 very different countries, very, very different cultures. And I was attracted to that methodology precisely because of what I just said. Structuring, it's a form of storytelling. Again, I would say the most extreme diary I made was Gambling Gods and LSD, where I even go as far as saying in the voiceover that this film is making itself, meaning that I didn't have a predetermined structure. It was all about the logic of the response. And what was very important in that film was to keep it chronological, because I felt there was an integrity to the experience that was beyond my own intellect, beyond my own narrative shaping. I actually developed a methodology of editing and shooting in that film Picture of Light I told you about, the Northern Lights, because on our first trip we had camera failure because it was so cold where we were filming. And we got a big insurance policy that allowed us to go and reshoot 1 year later. But what I discovered in that was I had a year in between the first footage, looking at that, and being able to start formulating things on the edit table, so that when I went back for the second time, I could plug things in. You know, I was learning what the film was about as I was making it. So I will start the process with themes that I then look for when I'm filming, but then I look at the material, I take time to start editing, and I learn new things. Through those associations, I discover new ideas. And sometimes the old idea will fall away or become very minimal, and something new will come into the foreground. But it's all there still, you know. So this process of shooting and editing I find very valuable. It depends on the film, but most of the time I edit with someone else, but we edit in very different ways. So with Gambling Gods and LSD, it was a very long edit over a couple of years. And we were living in the countryside in an abandoned hotel. It was a very good situation, but he would edit during the day and I would edit at night. So it was 24-hour editing. And he would edit, you know, some specific things that I would ask him to edit. For example, a character. And the character, you know, has an hour of talking, and we want to reduce it to an essence of 5 minutes. So he would maybe work on that, and I would work on a, you know, transitional sequence moving from one place to another, just as an example. And then we would look at each other's work, and this went on for months and months until we would have a complete thing, which in the case of Gambling Gods was very long sometimes. And we'd watch it together, then we would discuss it. But in the end, I do all the finishing editing. I do the sound mixing, the finishing editing. It sort of has my polish, because a lot of it is irrational. And I couldn't even tell an editor what to do. I can only do it by doing it. No.
Pensaba en tu relación con los científicos en
I
End
was
of Time, por
thinking
ejemplo.
about your relationship
Esa
with
búsqueda
scientists at
del
the end
conocimiento.
of time, the search for knowledge.
No, in fact, I
Sí.
mean, much of what you say I can agree with somehow, yeah.
Yo estoy de acuerdo con la mayor parte de las cosas que has dicho.
In fact, next week I will go back to CERN, the particle accelerator in Switzerland.
La semana que viene voy a volver al acelerador de partículas
Sí.
en Suiza. Es un dispositivo,
La máquina de Dios.
the God Machine.
To work with dancers, artists,
Trabajar
and
con
scientists.
bailarines, artistas y científicos.
And as you know, I already filmed in CERN for the End of Time.
Y como sabes, ya utilicé este dispositivo para filmar en End of Time.
And one of the things that really surprised me talking to the physicists there was this term, basic research.
Y una de las cosas que realmente me sorprendió cuando hablaba con los físicos era este término de la investigación básica,
Where they openly admit that they don't know what they're going to find.
en donde admiten abiertamente que no saben con qué se van a encontrar o qué van a encontrar.
And I said, hey, that's what I do.
Y dije, exactamente eso es lo que yo hago.
And also how,
Es una jam session de científicos.
yeah,
Jam session for scientists.
and they're very philosophical. I always thought physics was just rules, but in fact it's more like a philosophy until they find the thing that is evident. The most exciting thing is to be filming, but it's still, for me too, it doesn't happen enough. You know, there's years between films, and there's a lot of administration, which is very boring and mind-numbing. But somehow, especially the more independent you are, the more you have to do that. It's trying to find a balance. But lately, the thing I get the most inspiration from is being in nature, in fact. Whether it's with a camera or without a camera. But just to really observe and be in a natural environment, I find very inspiring.